Good afternoon, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Regan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. Thank you so much for being here with us. A new round of peace talks between the FARC rebels and the Colombian government will begin on Tuesday. Ahead of those talks, the ELN, the second most important rebel group in Colombia, is urging the government to launch a bilateral ceasefire. The guerrilla group, which is not participating in the Havana peace talks, has asked the government to negotiate a truce as soon as possible, taking advantage of the favorable atmosphere for ending the armed conflict. The ELN and the government have held talks to explore the possibility of formal peace talks since January 2014. However, they have not made significant progress. Last week, the guerrilla group clashed with government forces, which ended with several soldiers killed and 2 of them captured. Advocates and victims organizations in Colombia are urging the government to address the ongoing issue of paramilitary forces still operating in the country. Now that a possible ceasefire has been announced for December, the issue has become even more relevant. We've got more on this with our correspondent, Natalia Margarita in Bogota.
The latest unilateral ceasefire declared by the FARC rebels in July has brought violence down to levels never seen before. However, testimonies in the countryside expose the fear that paramilitaries continue spreading across Colombian regions.
Why the fear? Well, simply because the paramilitaries don't hesitate to come and murder us. They continue disappearing people without leaving any evidence behind. They dismember their victims.
That is just one of the testimonies that show the prevalence of paramilitarism. According to a recent report by the Movement of Victims of State Crimes, the Colombian state has not just failed to tackle the problem, it lacks of the political will to do so, and has even ignored its existence.
In order to dismantle paramilitary groups, we need to tackle their political structures as well as their economic structures, meaning those who design the policy of the paramilitary groups, those who economically sponsor them, and those who one way or another benefit from paramilitary activities.
According to the same report, there are some 16,000 calls for investigation against civilians and state agents who have been accused by former paramilitaries of collaborating with their organizations. But public prosecutors have done little to bring to justice those who directly promote and benefit from paramilitarism.
In its investigation unit, the prosecution service has prioritized only those cases related to the crimes of the FARC. It has absolutely failed to include as priority cases for investigation those that have to do with the role of the military, of the economic and political powers, or anything that could lead to dismantling those crimes where state power is involved.
Especially after the possibility of a timely bilateral ceasefire was announced, many think it is imperative and urgent to start tackling paramilitarism. Otherwise, there could be a cessation of hostilities between the FARC and the military, but the violence against civilians would continue.
And Natalia joins us live now from Bogota. Hi, Natalia. Natalia, thanks for joining us. What's the atmosphere in Colombia like right now as a new round of talks begins in Havana?
Hi, Regan there. Yeah, in fact, this new round, which will be the 43rd round of these talks, will start tomorrow, the 3rd of November, and will extend until the 30th of November. So we're talking about a new round of 10 days. Now, expectations here in Colombia are running absolutely high, especially after that possibility of a timely bilateral ceasefire, very likely to be implemented in December, was announced not just by President Juan Manuel Santos, but also by some leaders of the FARC, members of the peace delegation, has tweeted in the social network Twitter also the possibility of having this bilateral ceasefire. So specifically and especially for the residents of those rural areas most affected by the armed conflict, expectations are running really high, and they are expecting that in this new round of peace talks, the government and the FARC can, in fact, speed up the details that are yet to be agreed so that, in fact, they can implement a bilateral ceasefire sooner rather than later, Regan.
The FARC warned that their unilateral ceasefire is in jeopardy due to the ongoing military operations by the Colombian army. Do you think this is an issue that will be expected to be raised?
There is actually a subcommission that is called the Technical Commission for the End of the Conflict. This commission there in Havana is made up by military men and also by the FARC. And they have been discussing, not just now they are about to discuss, but from some couple of months ago, since this commission was established, they have been discussing the issue of a bilateral ceasefire. And also, we do know that the FARC has been raising this concern that a unilateral ceasefire is really unsustainable for a long period of time if the government does not agree to implement a bilateral ceasefire. Let's remember, Regan, that this is not the first. The FARC has been implementing a unilateral ceasefire since the 20th of July. But let's remember that this is not the first unilateral ceasefire, but is the sixth unilateral ceasefire they have been implementing since the peace process started 3 years ago. And the reason why the previous five unilateral ceasefires have failed is due to the government not agreeing to reciprocate the FARC's unilateral ceasefire with a bilateral ceasefire. So let's hope that this is an issue that not just gets addressed during this new round of peace talks, but that they reach an agreement on that.
And before we go quickly, Natalia, there's been speculation regarding the possibility of an agreement on victim reparations. It's been on the table for a while. How does this fit in with the deal on transitional justice, which was announced at the end of September? Is it likely to be reached during this upcoming round?
Well, actually, if we have a look to the 5-point negotiation agenda between the FARC and the government, the point of victim is the same point of justice. It's the fifth point of the agenda that where the compensation of the victims is included. So a general agreement on this has been reached back on the 23rd of September when both President Juan Manuel Santos and Timochenko of justice. So there is many details that still need to be discussed, but like the general frame on transitional justice that has already been agreed includes the issue of victims' compensation, Regan.
Thank you so much, Natalia. It's always great touching base with you. We'll touch base with you again later on this week to follow up on these meetings. Thanks again.
Back to you, Regan.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is visiting the Caribbean island of St. Lucia and the Grenadines to discuss bilateral relations. During his visit, President Maduro will review the most important projects being developed by both nations in areas such as energy, education and housing. The projects are being developed as part of the wider alliances of ALBA and PetroCaribe. The president said that without these programs, the Caribbean might be suffering a refugee crisis like the one in the Mediterranean.
Cuando uno ve cómo está el Caribe hoy.
When you see how the Caribbean is doing and you compare it with the Mediterranean, one can see that PetroCaribe has been worth it. That the ALBA alliance, this effort carried by Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez, has been worth it. And we have come to consolidate our partnership with RAF and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Esa bolivariana para los pueblos de nuestra América ALBA. Ha valido la pena el esfuerzo del comandante Fidel Castro y el comandante Hugo Chávez. Y nosotros venimos a solidificar esa hermandad con Ralph y con el pueblo.
And preparations continue in Venezuela for December's legislative elections. The National Electoral Council has begun preparing over 40,000 voting machines, which will be used in the polling stations. The president of the institution rejected claims by prominent opposition leaders who have refused to promise that they will recognize the official results of the elections.
The National Electoral Council has the strongest will to carry out elections as they have been scheduled for December 6th. And when we announce the results, they will be in accordance to the vote count, which is the legitimate will of the people. And no one should doubt that this will happen. We are an institution that respects and follows the law as an instrument to guarantee the democratic participation of the people, as mandated by our Constitution. We will guarantee voters their right to express their will with sovereignty so that they choose the country's future.
Para facilitar y como un instrumento de participación, tal como lo dice la Constitución, para garantizar que las venezolanas y los venezolanos se expresen su voluntad soberana y decidan los destinos del país.
Meanwhile, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela and its allies are continuing their signature campaign to support that call for all political organizations to recognize the official results. The organizers aim to gather 11 million signatures with the aim of avoiding violence and other incidents that could taint the electoral process. Pope Francis has announced that he will be visiting Mexico in February next year. The Vatican confirmed that the pontiff will make an 8-day visit to the country beginning on February 12th. As he has done during his public appearances, the Pope is expected to address issues such as poverty, discrimination, and notably organized crime, which are some of the most pressing issues concerning Mexicans. And a number of homemade bombs have damaged 4 buses in Mexico City. We've got our very own correspondent Clayton Khan on the line. Hi Clayton, it's great touching base with you. Can you tell us what happened? Clayton? We may have lost him there. We'll try to get him later on. We continue now. The main oil workers union in Brazil announced it will be joining an indefinite strike launched by other unions last week to defend the state-controlled Petrobras. The United Federation of Oil Workers, the largest in the country, announced through a statement on their website that they will join the strike in response to efforts by right-wing politicians to privatize the state-owned oil company Petrobras. The workers also oppose any changes in Brazilian laws that could allow other companies to explore for underwater oil. The current legal framework only allows Petrobras to carry out such explorations. The annual Atlantic hurricane season is always a tense time for residents of the small island states of the Caribbean, which have already dealt with Tropical Storm Erica and Hurricane Joaquin this year. Alison Kentish reports from St. Lucia.
In the Caribbean, 90% of economic activity is coastal, and 60% of populations live along the coast as well. It leaves the people of the region particularly vulnerable to extreme weather events and rising seas. Climatologists and meteorologists say the increasing pace of climate change will continue to have negative impacts on the people, environments, and economies of the Eastern Caribbean islands. They say the key now is to monitor and build resilience to the impacts of a range of weather events.
Is there, there's the potential for flooding? Yeah. Because it's your wet season. So that's when you get most of your rains and most of your heaviest rains. Is there a period in the next 3 months that we really need to be concerned about with respect to potential for flooding, for example? So that's one thing. Or is there a period where we might be heading for a heat wave?
More intense storms continue to wreak havoc on small islands. Erica was a tropical storm when she blasted Dominica, decimating homes and claiming 31 lives. Phillips and Daru lost family members and property in the southeastern community of Petit Savan, which was destroyed. He's one of hundreds of residents who were evacuated from the community he lived all his life and will have to call somewhere else home.
Future seems to be a little bleak, although, as you were saying, that it's not that I want it at the end, because I'm a retired police officer, and all the work that I have worked in my village to own my property to have a good ending.
Just this week, St. Lucia launched a project aimed at mitigating flooding in one of the most flood-prone communities on the island. The members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States have a number of projects underway as part of the Disaster Risk Vulnerability Program. Disaster mitigation officials say the reality is the Caribbean lies in one of the worst hurricane belts on Earth, and storms are inevitable. They say what is important is the fact that countries can prepare and build resilience. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
And coming up after the break, experts weigh in on the crash of Airbus 321, and Russians mourn their loved ones. Next.
The world is divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. a world infinitely connected, millions of people instantaneously interacting, experiences relayed in 144 characters, millions of lives in English. Tell us, sir, wherever the news, you'll be there. Rod stars G1 and Claudia de la Cruz are Rebel Diaz, hip-hop activists positioned within a history of political resistance through music. And you don't stop. They invite young people to express themselves about their social struggles. And you don't stop. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Tell us, sir, wherever the news, you'll be there.
The Russian airliner that crashed in Egypt on Saturday suffered an extreme external force. That's according to the owners of the Airbus 321 plane. French and German accident investigators have joined their Russian and Egyptian colleagues at the crash site in Sinai, where wreckage is spread over several kilometers. All 224 people on board were killed. Russian officials already said the plane broke up in mid-air, but insist that it is too early to identify the cause. The airline insists it could not have been mechanical failure or human error. 144 bodies of victims of the crash have been taken back to St. Petersburg. A claim of responsibility has appeared online from the Islamic State group, but it is not clear if this claim is genuine, and most experts say that ISIS does not have weapons capabilities to shoot down an airliner at such an altitude. And mourners have been laying floral tributes to the dead outside the city's airport and in the center of St. Petersburg. Most of the passengers, including 25 children, were Russian holidaymakers returning from the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. There have been mixed reactions in Turkey to the victory of the ruling AK party after Sunday's general elections. Supporters of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan celebrated in Ankara and Istanbul after the AKP party won its majority in parliament with almost 50% of the vote. However, the margin is not quite enough for Erdogan, to call a referendum on boosting his presidential powers. The pro-Kurdish left party, the HDP, fell from 60% to 11%. After a campaign of violence against its supporters. As human shields, according to monitor groups on the ground and local media, the civilians belong to the Shia al-White minority and are being paraded and displayed to prevent the Syrian government from bombing rebel-held areas. The rebel group Jaish al-Islam is believed to be behind this strategy and is the largest rebel group closing in on the capital city of Damascus. They are allied to some groups belonging to the Free Syrian Army. People in Gaza have been holding a festival to honor the Palestinians who have died in the recent weeks of uprising over the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Israeli repression. More on this event with our correspondent Noor Harazin.
The Al-Falah Charity Society organized a festival this Sunday in the Gaza Strip to honor the estimated 70 Palestinian martyrs who were executed in cold blood by Israeli fire during the Palestinian-Israeli clashes in the Palestinian territories last October. The event was sponsored by the Secretary General of the International Union of Muslim Scientists and took place at the Al-Rashad al-Shawwa Conference Hall. It was attended by a number of Islamic and national figures, including former Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh.
We missed his presence at home even weeks after my brother's death. We used to wake up together, go out together. Shadi is no longer among us. He's no longer sitting at the dining table with us. Hopefully Shadi is in paradise now. I'm proud of Shadi, and I'm proud that I am the brother of the first martyr who fell by Israeli fire in the Gaza Strip in support of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Jerusalem's uprising.
In other news, local sources in Palestine said that about 40 Israeli settlers stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound Sunday morning under the protection of the Israeli army forces to prevent the expected clashes. Sunday morning, Israeli authorities also released the bodies of 2 Palestinians who were killed by Israeli fire in the West Bank city of Hebron last month. Another 7 bodies have still been withheld after their relatives refused to bury them at night as demanded by occupation forces. This came hours after thousands rallied the streets of the West Bank city of Hebron on Saturday in a massive funeral of 5 teens killed by Israeli fire in October. Their bodies were released late on Friday. Nuharazin Telesu TV, Gaza.
Global warming is detrimental to the health of coral reefs. More on this next.
A little over 30 years is the estimated time that is left for coral reefs if measures are not taken to protect them. Experts assure based on the damage. Coral reefs are coloring white, a symptom of loss of vitality for one of the most important ecosystems on the planet. This whitening had only been present in 1998 and 2010, but the current episode is more severe. The increase in water temperature by the phenomenon El Niño also affects coral reefs, being the ones in Hawaii and the Caribbean as well as some in the Indian Ocean the most harmed. The acidification and deterioration in the quality of water also damages them.
And to close this afternoon, the most arid place on the planet, Chile's Atacama Desert, has sprouted a carpet of purple flowers. After several days of rare rain, it just might be the most spectacular flowering in recent decades. The seeds of the flowers remain dormant in the soil and burst into life every 5 to 7 years. Along with the plants have come an unusual number of birds, insects, lizards and rodents. The Atacama attracts thousands of tourists every year, but they don't often see it quite like this. Remember, there is more on these, lots more on these and other stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And please, you're free to join us on Instagram and on Facebook. For Telesur English, I'm Regan Devines. We hope to see you tomorrow.